Hello and welcome to the Unite Leadership Collective. My name is Tanya Hilton and I'm here today with Tim Allman and Jack Hallerberg. And we wanted to welcome you to the Leadership Development Accelerator. So over the next 10 to 12 months, we're going to be exploring several new concepts to introduce your team to the leadership pipeline. And this pipeline is going to help you and your team create a specific plan for your ministry. So before we get started with our first session, we'd like to introduce you and make you familiar with a few of these concepts. So the first concept that we're going to discuss today is going to be the church engagement model. So this model proposes that there's 5 jobs that every church does, whether it's intentional or organic, which is unintentional. So we'd like to introduce to you these 5 jobs, the mission of each of the job, and then how to measure success. So let's go ahead and get started with the 5 jobs. And Jack, would you like to get us started with the first job?
Yeah, so the first job of the church is to attract. So what does attract do? Here's a way to think about it is for each of these jobs, there's a motivation that you're trying to satisfy with the person that you're engaging with. That's why we call it the church engagement model. So the motivation of the person you're trying to engage in the attract job is the motivation of, I want to know more. I want to know more about fill in the blank of your ministry. Christ Greenfield, where we belong. I want to know more about this ministry. So how do you do that? How do you succeed in fulfilling, satisfying that felt need of the person? You do it with branding, right? So this is the phase of the church engagement model where a ministry is building up a brand, a really good reputation, but also that there's a lot of visibility of your ministry.
So some people may say attract. Does the Bible talk about attract? Like, is this a non-Christian word? This is just corporate mumbo jumbo. Let me just give you this. Jesus was very attractive.
Oh, yes.
People flocked to Jesus. Jesus had a brand.
He had a brand.
The brand was love and care for everyone,
healing.
Especially the broken and the marginalized. And word spread, and the crowds came. Now, what were their motivations for coming? I want to know more. Maybe I want to receive something, healing.
Yep, healing or Jesus. A message, like I'm hearing this new message before, this promise of new life, or some people, it's, hey, the Messiah has come and we've got the new, the new government is coming that they're thinking of, right?
So attract is not a 4-letter word. In fact, it's, I think, 7.
Well, was Jesus intentional about the attract or was he organic?
He knew what he was doing.
Okay.
He had a plan that he was following, right? So, with Christ, He's God, so he knows the future, and he's following the plan that satisfies the future that he desires for the world.
All people to be saved,
right?
To be attracted to the Son of God.
Yeah.
So we know that when people are intentional about doing these 5 jobs, their success and their outcome is more successful. So can you share with us a little bit of how we measure, what does a success look like with the attract model?
Success, when it comes to attract, the primary tool that you're going to use is a tool that you'll probably use in many areas, but we would call it the Net Promoter Score. So a Net Promoter Score, if you've ever filled out a survey, either like in an app or through email or a text message, it'll come in and it'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this product or this experience to somebody? And that's usually the simplest form of that. They may follow up with like 1 or 2 questions to tell you more about why you gave that score or what would be like to improve that score. This is a very important measurement tool. And we can go into more depth probably in a later session, or if you guys want to talk to us more about how you would actually use it, we're happy to have a conversation with you. But the cool thing about that is that it's benchmarkable and it's a reliable way of measuring that you actually have people in your community that are raving fans. Now here's the key thing. When you think about attract, when you think about your branding, people who are raving fans of what you do, what your ministry does, is much, much, much more powerful than any dollars that you spend towards advertising, right? So that's what I always recommend is you start with the Net Promoter, and then what does it look like to be intentional with it is you look at the comments to give about why they scored you high or what it would take to score higher, and then you intentionally work on doubling down on the things that make you excellent or eliminating sort of the low-hanging fruit that's a barrier towards promotability, right?
Excellent, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to our next model. Tim, would you like to share about that? The GETs.
Get.
Get is when you get their information, Jack.
You get to know somebody.
I'm getting to know you, and
for the first time.
What's my motivation on get?
The motivation for get for the person is, I want to try it out.
I just want to try it out.
I just want to try it out. I want to dip my toes. Dip my toes in the water, see how it is.
So get could be some sort of an event that you set up and you get their information to start the relationship.
Yeah, worship is probably one of the most common ways that we get to know somebody for the first time. If they have the need, the desire to get connected to a worshiping community, then they will get to know you for the first time doing that. It may be, like you said, a big event, Harvest Fest or VBS. Those are big, successful get types of strategies. Other ways to get to know people would be classes or workshops that meet the felt need of the community. Right.
So then we don't need to just get people that are coming to worship. We want to get people who have never been on a campus before.
Exactly.
Okay.
The key thing is if you get their info, then you've successfully, for this sake of things, you've gotten them, because now you can move to the next step, which is going to be following up, right?
Yeah.
And do we have systems in place to get their information?
Yeah. So the systems are, you want to be really good at making it easy and seamless and natural to collect somebody's information. So what's an example? If it's a big event, you sell tickets online, and when they purchase the tickets online, they have to give you your information. Right?
You have a drawing.
You could have a draw if it's an anonymous event where it's just like open to the public, an open house. Have a drawing. Fill out a little thing to have a drawing. If it's worship, make sure you have some sort of
Connect card,
paper or electronic Connect card. Also, very, very, very important is check in for kids. So when you're checking in kids into nursery or Sunday school, they have to say, this is who the parents and guardians are. This is a powerful way to capture the first time contact information for your guests.
So we got attract, get, and retain.
Retain.
Retain motivation is, I want to stay with you.
I want to stay.
I'm a part of your thing, but I don't know exactly the journey here. So I want to start the relationship. You're my people.
Yeah. So the way that you engage then with people that are thinking, is this a place where I want to stay, is your what we call follow-up strategies. Okay. So you have a strategy to have a first-time interaction with people. You have a strategy now to follow up with people that are here first time, second time, third time. Now, here's an important thing to know about follow-up, is the most powerful commitment usually comes at somewhere around the third interaction with you. So if somebody's going to give beyond 3 times, then it's very likely that they're going to be a sustaining, recurring giver. If they're going to worship more than 3 times, it's very likely they're going to be a recurring worshiper with you. So the follow-up process is to get them from first time to second time to third time. And what you're doing to follow up is to let them know, we care about you, we value you, we welcome you here, and you belong here. Right? So feeling valued, feeling known, and just letting them know intentionally, you matter, and we want you to be a part of our community.
So what are some ways then that someone would follow up? So are we talking phone calls, emails?
Yeah, so every church should have like a process mapped out for, let's say, new worshipers. So for a new worshiper that comes in, it may be a phone call. You may map it out with a standard. You may say the first time somebody comes in, we're going to give them a phone call. Second time is we may send them a postcard and a phone call. The third time might be we send them a video email from Pastor Tim. So you kind of toy around, you mess around, you say, like, what do we think is kind of a way to kind of build on the momentum of their recurring behavior, to just continue thanking them, to continue to notice them, make them feel seen and known and welcomed.
You've helped us with a really robust flow chart to map this whole thing
exciting.
out. You've had fun with that, right?
Yes, exactly.
And we call it the street to seat process,
exactly.
right?
And I was going to mention that there's an overall theme to this, because we can't follow up 3 times unless we know who's coming.
Exactly.
So again, it goes back to the get.
Right.
We want to have a good system in place to know every time that they've come in. We have a lot of worshipers who come in on Sunday that they just stay in the background. They don't want to be known. They don't want to say that they're here. But we have to be intentional about saying, hey, if you're here with us, if you're worshiping, be sure to connect on our Connect card so that it does trigger our systems so that we can do our proper follow-up for the get and the retain.
Amen.
Right.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, great.
So now we're getting to what most people would categorize as simple church. We've gone from attract, get, retain to grow/disciple.
Yeah, grow in discipleship. The motivation for that person is, I want to grow, right? Everybody is looking to grow from point A to point B, and they trust, they're going to be depending on the trust that you've built up. So the person is trusting the local church. They're entrusting you as the experts to say, what do I do to grow in my faith journey, right? So what every church should do is they should come up with a small number of discipleship activities that they invite everybody to participate in. And if you want to learn more about this, we strongly recommend the book Simple Church. This is, if you've ever read it alone, apart from this, it may be a little bit frustrating because in many ways it seems like an incomplete book.
Isn't there more?
Right?
Yeah.
And what we would say is this engagement model is the more it helps you understand what you're doing before discipleship and maybe what you're doing after discipleship as you're kind of pushing people into their calling. But this sweet spot, this churn, is the activities that you invite everybody into it. And you vet those things because you really believe those are the areas where people see the most growth. They grow in faith, they grow in maturity, they grow in connectedness, in relationships to other people. So for Christ Greenfield, it's worshiping, small groups, serving. It may be 3 things at your church, it may be 4 things or 5 things, but just keep it very simple and keep in mind that you really literally want to ask every single person to do some version of that discipleship behavior.
Every Sunday.
Right.
Every Sunday. And we mention every Sunday. We have those people who are regularly coming, so they're doing the worship part, but they may not be connected to a small group or they might not be serving. So we find that people are at different levels in their journey.
Right.
And to be able to constantly introduce, hey, you're not part of a small group. Or we may have people who are parts of small groups for years and they don't worship. Yeah, so you constantly invite them to grow in their area, whatever is their next grow for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the last one is my favorite.
Yeah.
And I think is one that as a ministry at Christ Greenfield and really as a ULC, we're leaning into big time. This is called multiply.
Multiply. Yeah. So in the job of multiply, you're engaging people who have the motivation, I want to contribute, right?
I'm going from a consumer to
I'm going from the consumer at the very beginning of, I want to know what's going on. I'm just engaging very superficially. I'm consuming what you give. And just like you said, I've grown. Now I want to contribute. I want to be a part of the Great Commission somehow, some way, some shape or form. I'm going to do what's in my calling to live that out.
And this is what the Accelerator will teach all of our churches, right?
Right, and this is a big platform of the Leadership Development Accelerators. We do teach how to create this pipeline so that we see that constant growth of people within that pipeline.
So what's some standard language, Jack, that you use in the grow or disciple to multiply?
Yeah. You'll hear us, so in the Accelerator, we'll talk about the top 10 leadership competencies that churches do if they're really nailing people development, multiplying new leaders. They nail these top 10 things. Here's a little sample of them. We call it the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule is you are intentionally developing new leaders and existing leaders on the 80% of competencies that apply to any kind of ministry, right? So the 80-20 rule says a really well-developed leader is 80% prepared to serve in any ministry role. Right. They could go from being a small group leader to being a youth group leader. There's differences, but there's a lot of things that are the same because leadership, the things that make you a good leader can be transferred over.
And how is the 20% learned then?
The 20% is learned, embedded in that ministry with, maybe the director of that ministry, but let's say the generic leadership competency of having an IC and U conversation and identifying new people to serve, that's a skill that transfers across any kind of ministry. Right.
And there's a key question that we can ask to evaluate ourselves for the staff.
Yeah, the big why, right? Is that what we're getting at?
Actually,
the big why?
Before we get to the big why, it's what does the staff see their primary job is?
Oh, yeah. So does your staff see themselves primarily as people developers? Are they doers or are they developers? Now, what we would encourage churches to do, if they're really serious about development, is when they write job descriptions for paid staff, that the primary thing that's in their job description is developing people. That is their primary work. And yes, they're going to be a subject matter expert in a particular ministry. That's very important. But you're developing people to carry that out.
Right.
You're moving away from doing, you're developing people to let them be the doers.
And if all of your staff are actively developing, and as your staff goes up, we have the upward draft.
The upward draft,
Yes.
right.
And that
so
looks
you're
like-
replicating yourself.
Yes.
Right? So this is where we get into multiplication. Multiplication is from replication, right? If you're a fantastic small group leader, can you replicate that in another? Can you identify somebody in your small group and replicate what makes you good as a small group leader in that person so that they can do what you do?
There is no success without
succession.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Have you heard that one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a John Maxwell axiom, actually. I just didn't make that up.
No, and that's great because, again, we do want to lean into, if somebody's looking for promotion, and this is one of the things we teach too, is that you can't be promoted to the next level if you don't have your successor already built up. And we do that with those tips of on-the-job training and apprenticeship and all these great,
80/20 and all these things. Yeah,
all these
they
great
work together.
concepts that we introduced to the Leadership Development Accelerator.
So this is just a quick primer. If we can support you, church leader, in any way, just go to uniteleadership.org. We do consults on any number of these. It could be via Zoom, or we could fly out and hang out with you for a day or so and just go deep with you. So we look forward, congregations, for you going on the year-long accelerator journey with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Any last words, Tanya?
Yeah, so we have a PDF that goes with this, so you can self-evaluate and kind of answer the questions.
Yeah, cool little tool where you can kind of go, you can actually evaluate across multiple, let's call them target audiences, youth, young adults, young couples, families with kids, seniors, right? You can go through, you can actually evaluate yourself, how you're doing for each of these jobs.
Yeah.
Right.
So we should have sent you out a copy of the PDF, and if you don't have it, you just email us to info@uniteleadership.org, and we can send it to you. And that really is our church engagement model.
Yeah.
Good job, Tanya.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall.